Uh, Hello everyone. Very good morning. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, Akshay, yes.
Okay, great. Uh, yeah. So as we announced earlier, we have been joined by Tejas sir, the faculty of this course, who will be demonstrating the Vue CLI setup, and yeah, few more things apart from that, apart from the basic things. So I think we have got few number of participants. That's not what we expected for the today's session. Anyways, I think we can start, and the people who will join a bit late, I guess they should be able to cope up from there. I think, yeah, we can start. So over to you, Tejas.
Thank you, Abhishek. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So I'm not going to switch on the camera because apparently the networks in Bangalore are slow today because a couple of service providers are down. So I'm trying to, make it as minimal streaming bandwidth as possible. I'll just share my screen and talk. Uh, so to begin with, welcome everyone to the screencast. Um, this is going to be like any other screencast I do. We'll explore the Vue CLI in this screencast. So even before we begin, let me start with sharing my screen so you can see along um, with me, walk along with me actually. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yes,
sir, it's visible.
Okay. Is it a text editor?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So the first, I think the most important thing is that we should install the CLI tools. I hope most of you would have installed it, especially two components. There is one called Vue CLI, which is the main component. Let me just go to the site to show you. So Vue CLI, which is the main component, and there is one more called Vue CLI service, which generally gets used at the develop server, like gives you features like built-in development server, so it can start the server locally, and has a build feature because we are going to convert Vue files into regular JavaScript and HTML and things like that. So that's part of the Vue and Vue services, and then there is Vue, which kind of gives you like a basic features which wraps around all of this. So you need to install both of them using npm. I think in the previous screencast you would have seen how to install node, npm, and then these two tools. Once you install, you should be able to do view command. um, you can do which view to see whether it's installed or not, or you can just do view help to see whether the plugin has or the tool has been installed. Let me just clear the screen. View help, and it should list out all the things that you can do. I think in the previous screen we just saw that you could actually view server.view file as a quick way to uh, do the development or prototyping. In this screencast, we'll do other things. For example, we'll use to create a project like a full-fledged project. I mean, it may not be a big project because we don't have that much of time, but we'll create a project, we'll serve the project, we'll build the project, and we'll see other features that we can use. For example, I want to show how to add a plugin to the project. And then we'll also see UI. Most of the things that you can do with the Vue CLI, you can also do with UI. It kind of runs a local server, allows you to create projects and stuff like that. So these are the things that we'll go one by one. Now, I'll take a pause every time I reach like a main point to ask for the questions. If you have any questions, you can ask at that time, at that point of time, and then I can answer them, and then we can continue. So we'll probably take, after every, like say 20 minutes, like a pause and see where we are, and then continue from there. Right. Now, some of you must be already seen the previous screencast where I've gone through why do we need a CLI. I mean, we could develop even without a CLI, right? I mean, we have seen just including JavaScript as a library, and we've done everything possible. We have included state, we have which is through Vuex, and we have done routing, local routing using routing things, and we've used forms. We have kind of used all features of Vue without using the CLI. But CLI also gives you these extra features that makes development easy in case of a bigger project. Let's say you are like a part of a bigger team where there are two separate teams to do front end and back end. Usually happens. I mean, usually project structures will be like, this is team structure, not the project structure itself. There'll be one back end team, team which develops business logic plus APIs, right? And then there'll be a front end team um, which does the UI design, UI workflows, and UI development, right? And you can also have like another front. This is, let's say, if you had a front end, if you had a separate team for front end web team, right? There could also be, a front end mobile team, which could be, I mean, developing a mobile application. They could be using something like Flutter, which is common, or then it would be same team, or it could be if they are into developing native apps, right? Native Android or iOS apps, let's say, and they probably always interacting with these teams, in the back end. And there'll be other teams which to do DBMS and things like that, right? But mostly more system towards the thing. Now you can see that the teams are separate, and once the API documentation is published by the front backend team, the front end team can start developing independently. They don't need to speak to backend team because the APIs are published. You have well-defined inputs and well-defined outputs, and they can develop independently, and they have their own process of you know uh, even though we have all the APIs developed, the front end team could be releasing feature by feature. It may not even be working in sync with the backend team all the time. So for example, they had features for all, like say uh, let's say if you take a previous example, create deck, create cards, create every dashboard, and add other features like having friends on the decks and sharing the decks with the friends and stuff. But the front end team could be just doing login and creating the deck and adding the cards in the first version, and then they might continue to do the rest. So they have their own process, and they have their own testing, development, all of that. So CLI kind of helps you separate out these projects as independent projects in terms of team, and in terms of code base, and in terms of logic too. So that's one of the biggest advantage of having to use Vue CLI, especially in a bigger project. If you're not an indie developer, or if you're not a single person or a small team developer, then there is also organizing code, right? Like then your code is separate. Like we saw, your front end code is separate, for your back end code is separate. This might live in a separate Git repository. This might live in a separate Git repository. They might get deployed separately, all of that. So that also gives you an advantage of keeping them separate, and then gives you ability to write test cases for this, and things like that. All these features will come into play as soon as we like grow out of more than, let's say, 10 12 workflows in a screen. For example, we call like a workflow in a screen is like a login workflow, where user enters the username, password, and he logs in, and then he is taken to the dashboard. That's generally like a one flow or a workflow. So if you, as soon as you cross 10 12 workflows, it kind of lands into a bigger application. Then I think you will need CLI. So there are like things like that. And there's one more advantage, which is Vue supports something called single file components. This is an advantage in terms of when we develop components, we had a mix match of the JavaScript file growing really big, and the style was in a separate place, and the template was built into inside the JavaScript. Now, with the extension .view, view supports what we call a single file component, where the one component lives inside one file, and all the things related to component live in the same file. For example, here is a hello world, which we saw previously, where the component, a JavaScript component is here, where we define the component and export. And there's a style, and there is a template, and this uses specific J template, but if it's just template, it could be regular or view template. So this gives an keeping logical things together. Now, of course, if the template JavaScript or style becomes too big, you can link them to a separate file and import them to make it much more modularized. But for example, if you have a component for, let's say, for a cell in a tic-tac-toe, then it could be in one of these, right? And since it extension has a view, we need to convert these files into actual JavaScript file, actual HTML file, and send it to front end for it to run and show in a browser, because ultimately all of this has to end up in the browser, and browser doesn't know what to do with the view files. It has to have a CSS file, it has to have a JS file, and it has to have HTML file. So that's where this is again useful, especially when you have lots of components, lots of custom components in your project. And now, one of the things that we saw initially was view gives you this view uh, gives you very easy way to do prototyping. That means you can just write one component and just test that component independently. If you thought through how to design a component, you will probably make all the code related to component in the same .view file, etc., and then it kind of makes it easy to test it. For example, this is repetition, but don't worry. We can just try it out just to make it easy for everyone to catch up if you're not already seen this. So let's say we have I'll just create a new folder called project one. Okay, and then I'll new file called app.view. I'm just going to paste a logo. I'm going to remove the, let it be. I have a logo, then, in the template, I have a view, and I have a small script, just exports the view. Here, it automatically creates the view, instance, and then adds the style to it. Now, style can be scoped. If you put scoped as a style, the style will be applied only to this component. Even though if there are any other divs with the same ID, it may not apply. It will apply to only this specific component. But since we have only one component here, it shouldn't matter. Now, if you have this, there's a problem here. For example, we have imported or included a file called logo.png, but we don't have it. So in a regular project, if you have an image in an HTML and if it's not there, the process itself doesn't break, in the sense it doesn't, the build doesn't fail, or there's no build process. Actually, when it goes to browser, the image doesn't show up actually. But here we have an opportunity to check, which means when you actually try to run, let's try to run it, view serve app dot vue, right? So view serve app.vue serve, actually what is it? It brings up the development server. We don't need to do any configuration, doesn't have to put one HTML page, import it, or any of those. It kind of creates it in real time and serves it as an application. So when you run it, oh, sorry, I have to go into the folder. Okay, so it's doing some things. It's starting a development server. Probably first time it'll take a couple of seconds because it needs to do some installations and packages for it to run. Give it a second. Then you can see it throws an error. Something is not found. You can go into check what is not found. It's basically, if you go up, it's relative module was not found, which is this, right? We have a logo here. Now I can remove this or add the logo.png. I'm just going to remove this and save. What happens on save is it auto compiles. This is one of the advantage of Vue using Vue CLI. It auto builds and auto compiles, right? So copy link. It has already started the server. It's a simple static server. It's nothing special. And you can see we have the welcome to Vue app. Now, let's say you still wanted to put an image here, um, for some reason. Or you wanted to, let's not put an image because I don't have the copy of that image. Let's say you added some more details to it. Uh, this was done as part of live session. So as soon as you save, it got built, right? It got refreshed. If you go back to the HTML page, it already refreshed. I didn't refresh it. It already got refreshed. You can see it live. I'll just try to make it hit the screen. That is possible easily. Yeah, here. So do one. Let's add one more paragraph. Okay. And as soon as I save, see what happens on the left. Okay, it got auto reloaded. So this makes the development very easy, right? Like otherwise, even if you're doing HTML on other places, then you have to actually save it, then restart the server in some cases, because or you have to open in the browser or Control 5, all of that. You don't need to do any of that here because it auto reloads. Hot live reloading is the term that they use. This also helps you in developing the apps really fast. Here you can see that we are not opened an HTML. There's no HTML file. How is it getting built and run? That's the question just generally gets asked. But that happens on in real-time compilation or real-time building of the this Vue component that we have here. So if you open the Vue page, you can see that it has created some chunk.vendor.js and app.js corresponding to the app. And if you go to the app.js, it's actually a Vue app combined together of like all the things that is required, as one compressed thing. We didn't do this. Vue CLI did it for us, like in a very efficient way. But at some point, when you are running on a production server, you may not be using Vue CLI serve, because Vue CLI serve is like our Apache development server, right? It's not meant to use it in production. To do in production, we have a process, what Vue calls as a build here. Let me just do once more Vue help, right? So build here. What does it do? It actually converts this app.vue into corresponding HTML, JSS, and CSS file. So you can deploy to any of the servers which can serve standard HTML files or standard static HTML, JS files, etc., etc. So let's see how to build it and see what is the build output, right? Let's say Vue build app.vue. Okay, it's saying it's building for production. It might take a couple of seconds because again, this goes through all of it, looks for what's the most efficient way to do it, and then has to build it and produce the HTML. So it's built it now. Took probably like 2 minutes or something, like a minute and quarter. Created 3 files, like it said, vendor app JS and app CSS. And then the build is complete. Everything is in the dist. It also gives features for deployment. You can deploy it on any static things, including if you have a GitHub account, GitHub files, or GitLab you can serve it from there, or if you have an S3, you can serve it. If you have nothing, you can just use Python HTTP server to serve it, or Nginx, right? And it also tells what's like how efficient it is, once, because all of the servers currently in production serve gzip version, what will be the size of it. And it's stored in the dist folder. Now, if you go to the dist folder, you can see that it has created an index file. Let me just format it. It's not formatting well. Anyway, you can see that it's a standard app. Simply imports an CSS. Some vendor here is our um, view and related things, and then our actual app content in most optimized way. So if you look at our app.js, you can't really read it because it's not very clear, in the sense it's very optimized. Like object names, all of them will be optimized, but you can see some of our text is here, right? You can make out all of that if you want to, but this is not usually won't be in a readable format. And it also creates source maps if you want to debug or do any of those. Now, you can copy this dist folder anywhere, um, and use it for deployment. If you for example, I can just now go to a cd dist, and at this point I can run any server. Let me just run python 3 my set http dot serve, right? It's running on port 8000. So let me run on local host 8000. This is not a Rive lead or app. This is a static app. Even if I change anything in my um, app.view, nothing will change here. Like for example, I added some text here, nothing will change here, because this is built at that time. Whatever was there exists, nothing will come. So I've already installed Vue DevTools 2 as a plugin. You can go explore this page, because this page uses Vue. It kind of got highlighted. Now if you do inspect, um, let me just, okay. Okay, so view is detected, and you can check all the details, of the things, just like the standard way. You can also doc should ideally show me the view. I think it's kind of hidden. Yeah, here. So you can see the manifest, many other things. Right? You can check any of those. Let me just manage extension. Yeah, it's enabled. Cool. So you can do inspect. Okay, so here I think you can see formatted HTML. There's an app with the ID app, and you can see all of the contents of it. Now, if you go to the head, there'll be a CSS. This will be our app CSS. Um, there'll be only one, rule which is related to this specific thing. You can do every other thing. You can change the format to regular or your mobile and see the formatting. So this is the simplest, and you can do prototyping using this, and you can run it and deploy it and do all of those. So that was the first part. That was the recap. If you're not seen before, but we'll do one more, right? We want to actually go beyond that and create a project. At this point, I'm going to pause and check if folks have any questions. If they have questions, I'll answer, and then we'll continue with the part 2 of it, where we'll create a project. Right. If you have any questions, you can quickly ask. Otherwise, I'll take a minute. I'll just drink some water, and then we'll continue. Okay. I think we'll continue. Now, let's say you wanted to create a project, not just one single component, right? Let me just go back and cd dot and create a project two, just a folder uh, for project. Now we want to we'll cd into project two folder. Uh, Here, let's see, we want to create a project. So we'll do view. I'll just start with help so we can see what all we can pass. This create project, we can send many options, but I'm not going to send any options. I'm just going to send the name of the app, right? So you can create name of the app, let's say live session app. Okay, I'm not going to do anything else. Oh, view create. Okay, view create live session app. It will take a couple of minutes. It's trying to figure out what all to do. Then it will give you with choices as to whether you want to use view 2 or view 3 or manually select features. I'm just going to go with default view 2 because that's what we are going to use in most of the things. But if you want to try view 3, you can try. I mean, there is some changes between view 2 and view 3, but it's not superbly complicated changes. If we know view 2, it's not that difficult to use view 3. So if you want to experiment, you can experiment. I'll choose the default. Then it'll take a while. It'll install certain things. You can also see it is initializing a JIT repository for all of this to have it in that repository. It kind of sets up the whole project for you. So you don't have to worry about many things. So it'll take couple of installs the build tools, installs the plugins, installs the whole project. So you can see that in Node is installing the packages. And if I see here, if I let me just close this. You can see it's installing a package.json, which is like our I mean, it's not same comparable, but Python projects, if you're releasing it as a package, it can have a package.toml or any of those whole package settings. It's like that. It's almost done. It takes maybe another half a minute based on my internet. Okay, so now you can see that it has used like 1272 packages to set up the whole things, and it says 655 contributors contributed to those packages. I'll give a minute for it to install. So you can see everything has been set up now. I put it on pause. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay, so you can see that what all packages it installed. It also tells me how how many vulnerabilities were there because I'm using a older version of Node. So one of the things it also gives you is, I might have to upgrade the node to the latest version and npm packages also, and then I can run npm audit fix so that all the packages get latest packages. For now, I'm not going to do that. And then it also serves what command to run, to test locally this app, because you can't generally uh, run it using, just serve. You could if you want to, but now it's become a full-fledged project. You can use npm run serve to run. What npm run serve does, that you can see here. If you go to your package .json, you can see npm run serve does vlu CLI services and serve. It's the same thing, but it's like much more organized in a way. It also exposes, like just like npm run serve, you can also call npm run uh, build, which will build, and npm run lint, which will lint. Linting is like formatting, and if there are any syntactical things, it can find out. And it also shows what are the other packages which got installed, and any other dependencies. These are only dev dependencies. These are production dependencies. The difference is this is required only in the development mode when you're working locally. And these are the production dependencies, in the sense we are going to use Vue.2.61 in production once you build, and we also are going to use core JavaScript of the node, and any other features that are part. I don't think these are useful, but you can explore what does each mean. And there's a package.log. Package.log is our somewhat similar to our requirements.txt, but it's much more complicated than that. So you can see all of the packaging names, their versions, their integrity. Integrity is their signature, so that when it changes, it will highlight, etc., etc. Uh, there's Babel config. You don't need to worry about it. It automatically creates one. You can just keep as it is, right? And it also creates a README, which you can see. It says how to run, what to do once the package is set up. Now it also has two folders. One is called source. One is called public. Public already has index.html and fave.icon. And source is where you're going to compile and build all our um, um, not build, put all our code, uh, all our view files, components, routers, everything here. And public is the one which you're going to deploy, and it comes with a template file for the app part. You can play around with this. Basically, if you're using Jinja, you can generate this using Jinja as well, if it's required to be done. If it's not required to be done, it can be just static file. In the next couple of screencasts in the coming week, I'll also show how to do some server side rendering using Jinja, and do some client side rendering. But that's a little more advanced. You can see in that upcoming weeks. But anyway, and then you have the source. It already created some hello world app. You can see the app here, and then it created a hello world component as well. One component which just prints the HTML. It just has a whole HTML, and then it has a name. It has a property which takes as message. Regular component properties. We have seen that already. And it has a scoped style, which means this style applies to only this HTML, not no other HTML. If there's an HTML here, like for example this, it won't apply to that. Basically, this is simpler. It's importing. This is your ES style importing, JavaScript style importing hello world from dot components hello world dot view, and then using one of the um, components as hello world, right? As for the app, and app is this map to this app, and it's shown here. Now this app is also mapped to this app here, right? All of our code will get injected here, because this is what is mapped to our main app here, right? So let's serve it first. Let's run it locally for development, and then we'll see what how to go about changing and adding other features. Npm Run serve. Again, this starts a local development server and runs it. Have to be no such file in a direct. Okay, have to be inside the project um, live session. Okay. You can see that it's using view CLI service .serve. That's what we saw in the beginning, right? One of the things that we were installing is view CLI services. If you get started and go to the CLI part, that's one of the here. That's one of the uh, two installation that we did initially, which gets used. Okay, so it's running similarly. It's running a local server which you can test. If your friend is on the same local network on the LAN, he can use this to access the development server. But we are local here, so we can just use this. Okay, let me open it. So you can see that this page came up. How did this page come up? It went into index. From index, it went into app, which got injected. And then from the app imports one component, hello world, which template is this. You can see the template here and the message here. This hello world goes into hello world component here and shows this whole thing, right? With this properties message shown on the top. Now you can remove the whole thing and say just my live session. Right, I'm just going to save it. You can go back. You can see that it's been stopped. Refreshed automatically. So the development becomes very easy. Let me just make it. Yeah. Okay. Now you can also do, like, if I do something wrong here, it builds a break. You can see that even the HTML, if it's not formatted well, if it's not cleaner, usually your regular development cycle, you would have missed it, and the front end would have been become garbage because the divs would have shifted and other things would have happened. But here it catches when you're developing only, and as soon as you fix it and save it, it kind of builds it and runs it. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to add routing to this. Let's do one small thing. Let's go back to our drawing board. Okay, and let's do like a small app. Not an app exactly. I just want to show how to use routing or plugins in Vue, which adds extra features, right? And let's say there are 3 links on the top. One is, let's say, home. Let's say other one is about. Other one is contact. You can, these are the standard features for many apps, right? It's not special, and you can do something here in the main part, right? This is the simplest app, which routing, we are going to do client side routing for about and contact. We're not going to do, server side. To do routing, what we did in our previous iteration is we went to routing page and imported that package. Right here also we'll do something like that, but there's a small difference. We are now going to install the JS directly. We are going to include what Vue calls it as a plugin. Let me go to that page. It shows Vue 3 here. Don't worry, it's not Vue 3 actually. It's the Vue Router 3, meant for Vue 2 applications. So don't get confused with that. So you can say get started. So here you have JavaScript. This we have done before, something like this. But if you installation, yeah, if you want to use it with Vue CLI, then we have to do something called Vue add router. View add router will add router capability to this application we do, and it'll also set up simple routing for you to use and try out, right? So we'll do that. We'll stop the server and we'll add view router to the existing project. Remember, it'll also overwrite your app.view. So if you have anything important, you might want to do it manually and not automatically. So in the idea is, include all the plugins in the beginning itself, so that it's not destroyed. Or like I said, Vue CLI also sets up a JIT as soon as it creates a project. So what I usually add is, you can see there is a JIT folder. I would usually commit JIT commit initial setup, so that if something goes horribly wrong, uh, then I can go back, revert to the I can revert to the previous version, right? So that's one way. So now I'm going to add view add router. This will add routing features to the thing, and this is called a plugin. Router is a plugin. Let's go to view help. Yeah, here, right? Installs a plugin, invokes its generator. It's already created in an already created project. So that's what we are going to do. Again, it might take a couple of seconds. It's installing corresponding JavaScript files required. Might take a couple of seconds, or actually like a minute or more, based on the internet connection. My internet has been tremendously slow today. Okay, so it did the same thing. I've put view history mode for router. Yes, I want history mode if you, so I can use the back button in the browser, right? I think there's some yellow text you can't see. There's nothing special in that. Don't worry about that. So installing things that are required to maintain a history in the browser, so that when I click back and front button, it works as expected in the browser, even though we are using browser side routing. Okay, so it's set up now. We can go explore. We can see the files have changed. There are more files added and more packages, folders added, and packages are updated. View is updated. Main.js updated. So let's go to the file explorer and see the changes that has happened. So you can see the component remains component. There's a new folder called router with index.js, which which has all our router. You would have seen this before, right? We were doing somewhat similar, but in JavaScript, we were defining the routes, and then we were passing the router to our app, main view app. But here, what we're doing is it's componentized, like modularized, just creating the router, forcing the view, which is a global object, to use view router, defining the routes, and then defining the router object, and then exporting the router so it can be used by other app, which is this. So here you're just defining the router links and router view. Router view is all the details shown. Router links become anchor link, like we had seen before, right? And then there's small change in the main.js. In the main.js, we're not. This is what builds up the whole view object, right? Automatically, we are creating a view. We're passing the router, just like the way we used to pass router in our previous uh, non-node kind of setup, right? Similar to that. And now you can run it. Let's see, when you run it, it should show a couple of links, and you should be able to do. It's npm run serve. Again, it will start a development server. It will build all the things that is required for the first time to start. Okay, so it started development server. To minimize like before, just to be able to see both of them. Okay, so let's go to localhost. I'm just going to increase a bit. Okay. Okay, here it is. Just going to refresh it for the first time. So you can see home and about on the top, and home goes, which is already home. About is about. You can see about is changed the URL. It looks like it's a separate folder on the back end, but that's the magic that view and local history is doing, that it's doing. Now in our project, we can see that this about is not coming from a component we had in a hello world, but this about is coming from a different place. So if you go to index, this about is coming from a component called about, but that's just a simple view. The difference is when you check the view, it's just a template. It doesn't have any logic associated. It's just like an HTML page. But here you can see this view has um, some JavaScript export along with that, but there's no CSS. Now, what's the difference between components and views? Usually, technically, there's no difference because they look the same, they feel like the same. Logically, the difference is components are reusable components. For example, if you do rows, if you do column as a component, if you do a button as a component, um, like if you do like a file uploader as a component, those are all small units of logical units which are independent, that can be reused across the project. Those are we usually call as components. Views are generally like equivalent of your pages in an app, so that it has all the logic and things like that. So technically they might look the same. Logically they are kept separate so that it's easy to understand. It's not that I can't use, like for example, in hello world, here you can always put a path, import a component if the component is the one what you want to show, right? So let's do some components and add properties and things like that to see what else we can add. Let's say we'll add a uh, contact as a another view. Contact view. So we'll have template as a top. You can have style at the bottom, and you can export the component, right? This is the simplest one, right? And this is the simplest structure, right? And the name will be a contact. Let's say we are taking the title of the page from properties and not the message. And I'm just going to add the same thing. We can go and call it uh, title from properties. We are passing properties to the template, and then I'm just going to change this to contact. So now we have a new ACT, right? We have a new contact page, and then we can include this in our router. We wanted it to be at /contact, so we can just do that. So it's going to be contact, and contact is a component. but we have not imported the contact yet. So we have to do that. If you see our console, it's throwing an error. Contact is not defined, right? That's because we have not imported the contact. So I'm going to import the contact as well. Here you can see it's import is happening dynamically here, but we are going to do the same thing. I'll show you one more where we'll actually import a component directly without doing this these things. We don't have to give this, but we can always give this for it to help. So that, you know, when it generates the HTML, the code splitting actually works. I'll explain what code splitting is later. But yeah, we don't have to do this, but it doesn't. If you do it, it does efficiently. Okay, dot use import contact. Okay, contact. Okay, so I'm going to save it. It says error contact is defined but never used in index.js. Okay. So I don't need to define here. I'm already importing directly here. If I'm going to use a component, I can import it and then use it. I'll show one of that example as well. Okay. Now let's put it in the router. We have put it in the router. Now let's go to app and add a link to that as well. Okay, we've done that. In the contact, I'll just to make sure we are seeing the correct values. I'll say this is contact page. Right? Okay. Okay, we'll just put a separate here so it looks nicer. Okay, now if when I click on contact, it's not loading. So there seems to be some error. Okay, that is all fine. Let's go into the contact. Okay. Okay, so we're not sending the property string title. So let's try and send that. Either you can do props here. The way you send properties is by props and send the specific properties, or for like, no, for now I'll just remove it because we know we are going to be in the contacts page. Right, let me just refresh. Okay, it's not still showing the template. Let's see this. Home pulls up from hello world. Okay, contact is from contact, about is from about. About is just a template. Okay, so there's a difference here. So we'll just show that. Okay. So we're going to use it like a. So here, I think we are just going to you're just going to use the view part, just the template part, and not the whole thing. So let me just do that like a component inclusion, so everything else also works. Okay. Save it. Okay, not home. Okay. Okay, it seems to be working now, but the content is still not shown. Template contact, it seems to be correct. Okay, Let's see in detail what else is missing. If you missed wiring anything else, we'll add some script is correct. We are setting up the default. Okay, and class is correct. Template is correct. Okay. Let's see what it is showing here. Okay, router one, router link. I tag exclusive route. Okay, everything seems to be okay. Okay, this is working router view. This router view is not does not seem to be working. Let's check our router view. Seems to be correct to contact. Okay. What's happening is the router is not loading the contact into the router view here. If you see, go to any other router, you can see that if you go to any other link, you can see the router view gets loaded to slash about. So there seems to be something wrong with the routing of it. Oh, see here, that's the problem. I put slash, it should be slash contact. Okay. So now let's refresh it. Okay. You can see this is contact page now. Okay. So, I mean that this is also an advantage of having this view add-on tool so that, you can debug like the way I did debugging just now. Now, this contact itself could have form. For example, if you wanted a form, um, you could attach a form. Let's do that anyway. Let's add a form with name and other things. Let's say we wanted to collect, have a form where people could contact you, send a message to your backend. So it has name, email, message, um, and thing, and a button with the event called send it. I mean, I'll remove this first. We can just see this one. If we are using V model for linking with the data, so we'll have to add the data here because this is a component. It will be a data function, not the not an attribute. Like this is the state, but it's a component level state. What we are going to store is name, email, and message. Okay, I'll do some default things. Okay, but actually this should return a dictionary of these. Right? Okay. This is like developing any of the components like we developed before. So now if I go here, you can see that there is a it's auto reloaded and there is a let me just minimize it. Yeah, auto reloaded and there is a text box here. Now, if you go to a different thing, you can see that so we're not loading anything from the backend, but it still has all the things respectively. And that's how efficient it is because it also loads up, chunks of the JS. That's where it is defined. Uh, it helps in splitting the code into chunks so that only that JavaScript is loaded dynamically. Anyway, let's go to the contact and make it a little more better by adding a button and then adding an event. Adding an event is easy, right? Like, we have already done that previously. Like first we have to add an event handler, then add an event and cache that event. So let's add a method like we added before. This also, we've gone through how to add methods. Let's add a function called send message, right? And it's a function. Okay. Currently, I'm not going to do anything here. I'm just going to do console.log sending. Right? And you can do your Ajax calls here, right? Or fetch calls. If you want to send it to your backend. Now, to call this send message, we need an event and we need a button. So we'll add that. We'll add a button which will on click call a send it. But we are not calling send it, we are calling it send message. So that's the function name that we have to give, send message, right? And we call it send it. Send message instead of send it. As soon as I save, you can see it's getting refreshed. One more thing, I'll just put an alert here so that it pops up as well. Right? It's easier to see. Now this part is ready. So when you click on send message, it pops up a message and says sending, right? So you can also access data, right? You know how to access this dot data dot name. I think should be able to access this. Just like should be able to access this. Okay. It's not. Is it dollar this or this dot dollar? It's one of those functions. I think it should be just we don't need data access it direct. Let me click this. Okay, you can see your name. That's the one here. But if you put my name is let's say Fatima, then you can click Fatima. It should show up. So you can use all of this and then send it to your fetch call. That's one thing. But once you send, you want to show them a thank you message. You don't want to wait till it comes back. You can show it before only. So we can do that also by using if else. No, we already know how to use if else in Vue. Just going to move this a little bit to the left, make it a little bit bigger. Right. So we can add a div inside here. And this is our second div. And what we'll do is based on the logic, whether we are sent or not sent, we are going to show one of these divs. Here, we'll say thank you message sent. So what we'll do is we'll define a variable called or a data point in the local store called message sent, and we'll make it by default false. Okay, so that we can use this, and when the message is sent, we'll make this true. This dot, we'll remove this. This dot message sent is equal to true. And this you can put it on success, right? You can also show intermediate, we are sending message, all of that also, if required, you can take that call. So here, but we have to show one of them. To show one of them, you have to use if else, right? If that will be done using this, we can add it here. If is it sent message? No, message sent. If message sent, then message sent, show this part of the template. If not, which is else, right? It could be v.elc and save it, right? And then like now, if I click on it, you can see thank you message sent. Go back, come back again. When you come back again, this whole thing reloads and initialized again, all of that. That's why if you want the state to remain, then you should use a global state. Use a global state Vuex to have it like forever if you want to show message sent. But otherwise, it'll when you come back, it'll reinitialize this local state and show you that. So in some cases, you might want to keep this in a global state and keep some of them in the local state. So that's like an additional of a component. Now the other advantage is, writing test cases. You can also write test cases using Vue CLI. We can look at one of them, see how to go about doing it, right? To write the test cases, you need to add an add-on. So Vue CLI has two kinds of frameworks, either Jest or a Mocha. You can use one of them to run the test cases and write the test cases. It's as easy like as you would install as you install the router to install this. So you could just because we have the project already, we can just call view add unit jest. Let's do that. It'll take again some time. Okay, I'll say no, and let me just commit it just so that we can go to the previous state if in case something happens. Project add, commit, edit, router. Now I'll add unit test. Maybe it kind of, if it automatically makes any changes, and if we don't want that, I can go back to the previous commit. And Vue supports a lot of add-ons. A lot of plugins rather, not add-ons. Sometimes they're called plugins. I think some people call them as add-ons. So you can use, like, for example, we are currently using Vue unit test. There's a plugin called PWA. You can use this to create a PWA. It gives a lot of features for local caching, installers, local app, all of those features. You can try this. This is one of the interesting one. Rest are okay. I think most important ones are like, PWA testing, and the one which we already used, router, and Vuex. So it's still taking some time. Let's wait for a couple of minutes. You can also see, let me just go to Vuex. So Vuex seems to be like installed, not like a plugin. It's like a package, node package. So it's just, npm install Vuex at next -- save. Then you can start using Vuex. I'm not going to get into Vuex because it's similar to how we did the router, just including and then importing and then adding to the app and using. Similar to what we have done before in the code. Code itself won't change much. Just, instead of doing this in the installation part, instead of including this, you'll be doing this. Like, let's check whether it's almost done. Setting up and install tests and stuff like that. Give it a second. Okay. And now we can see what all the files that has changed. You can see that it has updated the packages and then added a new config file called just config, and then folder called tests, where we'll write all the tests. Now, if you look at the package, Let's look at the just config first. It just says we are going to use this plugin. That's all, nothing special. And by default, it test folder is used for test. And there could be a package change to include a testing command. Let's go to this here. Test unit is a new command added here. It will run view CLI service test unit, right? Which will run the test cases. So, there's an example test case. So let's go back and see how to run the test cases. Um, and now we know that view, in the package JSON has added this command. So until now we were using npm run, right? Was it the one we were using? Yeah. And let me just go back to that, much easier. Npm Run serve, because and that was running this. Now we'll just run Npm Run test unit, right? So now what it will do, it will go to the test folders, unit test, and run the spec. Spec is a test case, or series of test cases. This is one test case. So now it has run. It is, it checks the props message whether the correct prop message is sent. For example, right? It sets up the message as new message and checks whether it's the same data that is extracted and shown, right? Um, right here, actually, you can see that we are setting the message, and message should get set into. If we check our hello world component, message should get set into the shadow DOM into this properties file, and that's what we are checking here. Here, we are getting the wrapper, and we are checking wrapper.text is same as our message, right? If it's different, then it will throw an error. Basically, let's we can make it to fail as well. Like instead of comparing to message, if something else, then of course it will fail. It's running now. Say it failed. It was expecting substring AJ KJ, which we said it will be, but since we are setting using properties, it's it's doing new message itself. You can see it's the whole thing. It just uses contains, right? Right. Okay. So just is a package in itself in Node.js world to do all that testing. It has many asserting functions that you can use. One of them is match. You can also do like inside comparisons, all of that. You can go to the docs. There should be. I can do many other things using matches is what I wanted to show. Okay, so expect is you can direct match. Expect to be is it has to be exact match. Like for example, here, okay, and if you make it to be, it has to be it has to be exact equality. Equal is also like that, but match, what we are using is to match is little different. To match will actually check against the regular exception, which means it's just like contains, whether this text contains this text. Because if you see hello world has this also as part of the string. So it wouldn't actually directly match if you do equal. For example, let me just run this for show whether it passes, just for clarity. Okay, it passes, right? Now, instead of to match, I'll make it to equal. Okay, if we just go to here to equal, then it will fail because they're not actually equal. right? It failed because they are different. Because the to match users actually inside, it's part of the string, that kind of comparison. Like that, you can write even test cases for your contact as well, right? Contact, send the thing, on click, check whether it's setting the value message sent to true or false. All of that you can check. Um, that's how you write more test cases. And this way, you can also have lots of test cases for your front end, so that you don't have to manually do the testing all the time. You can add your own test cases and automatically test the test, UI. At this point, I'm going to stop and ask for any questions that we have, and wrap up after. I'll wrap up after the Q&A. I will leave the Vuex part to experiment for yourself. Like now you're installed, now you know how to add add-ons, so check all of things. You can try global state. For example, you can say uh, in our application, let's say once the message is sent, this message sent should be in the global state, because once it's sent, it's sent. Even if it comes back, it still should. Ideally, let's say our expectation is to show thank you. And maybe we can give another button, send another message as part of thank you, and reset this value and show that form. So you can go do that small change, like add a button here, send another message button. Okay, I'll just comment this out by commenting in HTML. Okay. And then once that button is clicked, you can make the message sent as true or false, so that this part gets enabled, right? And he can send a message again. But we'll make this send message as the global state using Vuex, so that even if it comes back, it will still show once sent that thank you message sent, send another message. That kind of logical thing. You can go make that change and try it out and see how to go about doing it. I'll leave that as an exercise to do. That way, now using Vue, you know how to create routers, how to create components, how to create simple views itself if you don't want to create components. I mean, there's not much difference, but you can, based on your requirement, you can either put it in components. If it's small, independent, reusable thing, then it's a component. And then you can also play with writing test cases. Go explore the um, just as a testing framework. It's like any other testing framework. It's like a JUnit in Java or PyTest in Python. You just need to know a few things to run it and use it. At this point, if you have questions, you can raise hand or chat, put it in chat. I'll take up those. Yeah. Okay. No one seems to be having any questions, or am I still audible?
Yeah, yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay. So I think anyway, I'll wrap up. Continuation to this is how to do a build, which is similar to how we would have done building. Uh, Instead of npm run serve, do npm run build. Sorry. Building is actually generating that, instead of running a local dev server, it will actually generate all the components, JavaScript files of it, and then put it in a folder so it can be deployed anywhere else. So it's actually building for production. Okay, as you can see, it has built all the files, put into folder called dist, which distribution. Now you can go check the dist folder for our interest. Yeah. So it has put the same index file here. You don't need this public index. What it means public index, whatever is in the public folder will actually get shifted here. That's all. If you have images, it goes here like that. But these are all generated automatically by the view build system, right? You have all of these maps are usually used for debugging. If you have an exception somewhere, it will map to a specific place where this happened. So all of this happened. So now actually, let's go to that folder. This is all static, right? So we should be able to, I'll open a terminal here and serve using any server. Same thing shows up. Now you can also check how this looks on a mobile application by clicking this, right? And you can see how it looks on a mobile versus desktop. All of that you can check. And if you want to make it responsive, um, different sizes, all of that you can do. Cool. And since this is not this is a production build. You see that your view plugin will say that view detected, but it won't give you that view add-on only because it doesn't include the development version of the view. Development version of the view has lots of things, help the debugging, help the things. But this is the production version, so it won't. It'll try to remove all the unrequired things to make the code very efficient. Uh, so it would have all removed all the development support, all of that. That's why you don't find it here. But here on the other side, if on this page, because this was initially first from the development server, but this is not running anymore, it would have shown that view app. That's the development part. Now you can just copy paste this into any like a file server and serve it, right? It doesn't have to be Node. At this point, it's free of like Node. You don't need Node to run it anymore. Okay, and that's it in today's session. Actually, in the few upcoming um, screencast we will also you will see how to integrate this whole view build process or the view projects along with your Python projects, and how to build them together. If you're a small team, you have to build both, right? Both the front end and the back end all by yourself. How to do that. And there are a couple of choices there, given your ease of use or your development workflow your thinking process. We have given two such flows in our screencast. You are encouraged to use any of them. Okay. That's it actually from my side today.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So yes, sir. No one seems to be having.
Sure. Let's close this. Of course, if you have any questions, you can actually post it on the discourse. And, yeah, and we can take the conversation or continue with the conversation there.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining in this session with us. Okay, so we'll be wrapping up this session here. And yeah, we wish you a good week.